Yo, what up, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another. I'm going to call this series the Debrief, all right? Because we're going to be breaking everything down. So it's the Debrief segment of the off season. Last time I was joined by Andrew Claudio. Now I got my guy Jeff Johnson. You know, we're going to break everything down. We're going to talk about Yabusele. We're going to talk about Jordan Clarkson. We're going to talk about Mike Brown. We're going to get into all of it. So make sure that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsors, man. All right, we got a bunch of them. Make sure to go to kftvshop.com. All right, go get some merch. We got the mural rocking today. Let's get into it. All right, Jeff. Man, it's been a little bit. It's been a little bit since we've spoken on air. But how are you feeling, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Enjoying the summer, getting ready for that Knicks Twitter day. It's going to be a really good time. Just sitting back, offering my commentary and just watching the madness that is NBA free agency ensue. So it's been an interesting past couple of months for sure.
It has been an interesting past couple of months. The whole fiasco of who's going to be the coach. How come they didn't make a decision right after they fired Tom Thibodeau? Why is it taking so long?
Plan gate.
Yeah,
Plan gate.
Plan gate. I like that. Plan gate. It's like you can't we can't just take time to do our due diligence to figure out who we want as the next head coach. I got people in my DMs telling me that Tibbs was this great and just criticizing what I said about Mike Brown, about how he's going to have an innovative offense, could be more ball movement, this, that, and the third. Come on, man. If you use your two eyes, you know it's good. The offense is going to be much different than what we just previously saw. But before we get to Mike Brown, man, we'll save that for the last topic.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about some of the free agent moves that were done prior to the head coach being being assigned. What do you think about Jordan Clarkson, man?
I like it for the price that they got him for, veteran minimum, someone who could outscore the Knicks bench by himself the way they were going last season. A couple of the key aspects that I thought the Knicks were lacking, even when their offense was buzzing early on in the season, was that extra ball handler who can run an offense, who can drive, dribble, create, get their own shot. All of those capabilities on offense that you see other teams possess. That was one of the reasons why the Pacers were so formidable on offense, because they were running out there with 2 point guards or two creators in Nembhard and Halliburton. And they didn't have to be super elite at what they did. They just had to be able to keep the offense humming. Like, of course, Hallie's an elite creator, and Nembhard, he got the national spotlight. And you see what a lot of folks was saying about him. He is a very good player who shines in big moments. He's an excellent playoff performer and someone who can keep your offense going, create, play, make, do all those things while Hallie's on the bench or if Hallie's on the court. This is the type of thing you see that with J-Dub in the OKC. You see a lot of those different archetypes that are at play. The Knicks needed that. And I think getting that off the bench, somebody who could slot in with some of the other starters. Above all else, we talked about it, Alex. Lineup creativity, roster deployment, the way in which we create these different lineups are going to be paramount for this Knicks team. And I think Clarkson gives you a little bit more flexibility in your guard rotation, gives you that punch, gives you that sixth man of the year quality. I like him with Mike Brown because Mike Brown knows how to maximize those bench guys. You saw it with Malik Monk. I think he can do well with Jordan Clarkson. So I think it's something that was drastically needed. He's going to have a summit with Mike Breen. I'll tell you that much. He's going to have a summit with Mike Breen because Mike Breen was fed up when the Jazz played the Knicks. But I do think I'm not going to hold Jazz deficiencies against him. I'm not going to hold that Jazz timeline against him because, come on, we knew there was a tank in Salt Lake City that had unlimited gas and was looking for its destination being Cooper Flag or whoever else. So we knew that they empowered him probably a lot more than you wanted to. And he was just out there doing his thing, getting buckets. If he can get back to early 2020s Clarkson and that level of efficiency to add on to what else he has, I think that's going to be a solid pickup.
Absolutely, man. And look, we did the free agency show with shout out to George to Into the Knicks Verse and CP, and this is before. Look, they told to me that both of them were bought out, him and Russell Westbrook, and I was like, I guess Russ, seeing that just seeing how cheap the contract was, you can easily trade for him. And then once they told me, hey, both of them were just, bought out. I was like, oh, I'm going with Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah.
And it's just so different because, as you already mentioned, we're talking about a three-level score. Forget this past season. You're right on that. It's the team. Everyone wanted out, man. What are we doing out there? Like they weren't competing. And if you're not competing, you're going out there. What energy do you have to give to a losing situation, a constant losing situation, right? So for Jordan Clarkson, I'm not even going to look at this here. Like you just look at his cleaning the glass numbers, it's below than what his averages were, right? You look at his statistics, not the greatest for this past season. But I agree with you 100%. You needed that extra guy who can create for themselves. And that's something that we missed when we got rid of Emmanuel quickly, right?
Yep.
Even with Quentin Grimes, after they did that deal for OG, they gave Grimes a little bit of a test run with that bench unit. Obviously, he wasn't happy with the situation, got shipped off to Detroit for Burks and Boyan. But without those guys, you just saw this Knicks team struggle. And it's like you needed somebody else in here. And while we tried to get that out of campaign, which, look, even for as frustrated I got towards the end of the season, I understood that this is a cheap deal. You're taking a flyer on the guy. It was just at that point, and obviously much different. We'll talk about when we get into Mike Brown, is that
Mhm.
he was way past his welcome because you just weren't getting anything out of him. Clarkson, I feel like he can have a bounce back. He's going to be in a new market, a market that fits his style. He likes fashion, so he could be rejuvenated joining this team, a team that's competing for a championship. We're talking about a team that was 2 games away from beating the Indiana Pacers the way they were currently constructed without a second guy who can initiate and create offense.
Mhm.
So that should be different, especially when you look at the East that has been decimated with injuries, even though things have been changing, right? You don't have Dame. Dame is now away from the Bucks, but I still don't trust that Bucks team without a true floor, like a true floor general and creator. Pacers are going to be out for this season. The Celtics without Tatum, they just overhauled their roster. It looks like they're taking a year off based on the signings that they just did. So this is going to be an open shot for the Knicks. And I think for somebody like Clarkson, when you're on a 1 year deal, you're trying to prove it and not be out of the league. Why not bounce back in the season? A contract year player, man, is my favorite type of player who's looking to prove themselves after a down year. So I got a lot of faith in Jordan Clarkson, man. I know we're going to have some head scratching moments because that's just who he is as a player,
That's what you
But
sign up for.
what do you like? I guess are there any concerns with Jordan Clarkson that you have? Because we could talk about all the good things, but are there any concerns?
If the Jordan Clarkson that showed up against the Knicks, that Mike Breen wanted to like excommunicate to overseas, that's the player I don't want to see.
Hmm.
That's the only thing. He feels like the new game plus version of campaign.
Mm.
Little more controlled, better scorer. Probably you have more confidence in his YOLO shots than Payne. And let me just say, as an aside, Campaign won them a playoff game, and he was an excellent minimum signing. Excellent, excellent, excellent. For you got more than what you paid for with Campaign. He just ran out of gas. The Campaign force did not last past that game. He gave you the whole entirety. He emptied the clip of the Campaign force in that game 1 versus Detroit, and nothing was the same. So I gotta salute him for that. What you would want is that type of guy more consistently. And I think
Yep.
that's what Jordan Clarkson will give you. He just has to be able to contain himself. I would love to see that type of guard play next to Towns in those second unit lineups where he's not going full Carlton Banks
Mm.
for Bel Air High. That's what I'm kind of hoping for. But those are really my concerns. Or ultimately with any player that he's on a downward slope and it continues to regress. That the yada 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 we're doing with Utah, it continues.
Hmm.
That's really the concern. But it's low risk, low reward because you signed him for the vet minimum.
Right.
So
And
if
if
someone else emerges, you slot him right in.
for sure. And then think about it. It's like we're talking about the vet minimum. It's easily a contract that you can aggregate with something else. And look, to me, man, the way that the league is shaping with the new CBA, to me, and I haven't really said this yet on a show, I just feel like it's just the wealth distribution moving forward. Like I don't even think we're going to see like these crazy max contracts that we've had years prior where you saw like James Harden get like 250 or like all those. I think those are coming to an end. I think what we will see is more of what Jalen Brunson is earning, just
Mm.
because if you're trying to build out a roster, if you're going to take a large share of that cap, what's the team that's going to look like moving forward? And we're seeing that right now, right? And how many moves can you do when you're pressed up against that second apron? We're seeing that right now for the Knicks. They got, two decent signings as of right now, but I feel like we're about to see some wealth distribution based on the CBA. So based on that, I feel like you could still, based on that and what we're seeing with all these contracts where guys are signing for like vet mins or like like 5-6 million here.
Hmm.
It's an easy contract. I feel like you could move somewhere else or even aggregate it if you're trying to get something better in return. So as you mentioned, low risk, low reward type situation for Clarkson. I like it. I know people are going to talk about the defense. He's not a defensive guy. I feel like when you look at this team moving forward, you just got to go all in with what it is, which is just a heavily offensive team, and that you hope that Mike Brown can mask that or put some camouflage over with guys like OG, Bridges, Mitchell Robinson, Deuce McBride, and they're gonna have to rely strongly on those three guys for their top end defense.
Right.
How he's able to mix and match those things, I'm gonna be very curious to see how those lineups work. And look, even Yabusele is a good signing for defense too. I guess before we move on to Yabusele, is there any concerns offensively? Because when you looked at this team last year, it was like second unit was primarily Cat with the second unit and you
Mm.
get again to work. Are you afraid that one, Clarkson's going to take away from that and maybe like minimize Cat's, touches with that second unit? And I guess the second question is I looked at Mikal Bridges as that guy who could have had the RJ Barrett role
Right.
as running with that second unit and giving him a lot more free reign to be on ball, be a creator, initiator. And I feel like if you have Clarkson, he's not just going to be playing little minutes. He's probably going to get some good minutes depending how the night goes. Are you worried about him just kind of being, I guess, locked into a certain role that we've already seen?
Yeah, that's Mike Brown's problem, not mine. You know what I'm saying? Like that is what he is being hired to figure out. I do not have a fear that Cat is going to be limited in touches because something tells me Mike Brown is going to emphasize Cat
Mm,
in this offense. When they went through their hiring process, the offense and lineup substitutions, all of that, all of those main points that were the anti-Tipsy points were brought up. So it would shock me if he would be de-emphasized more than he was this season with
hmm
those second units. I think about a potential second unit like maybe it's Bridges, Cat, Clarkson, Yabusele, and Hart.
mm,
Right?
interesting.
You got three very good to great elite 3-point shooters. You've got Clarkson, who's streaky, and then you have Hart, who is Josh Hart. I think that's something that's solid. Like I think in that offense, you can make it a cat centric offense, and they're gonna have to guard somebody. They're gonna have to guard somebody in that offense. So I think whenever you add somebody like Jordan Clarkson, who has that 6 man of the year pedigree,
Hmm
it can only be additive to your team. It's going to rely on the offensive schemes and the roster deployment to determine how much he's maximized. Maximization was one of my key focuses for this year. That was my buzzword. How are you going to get the most out of every single player? And if Mike Brown can do it, then everything else we're talking about is moot.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if anyone's a little concerned about Jordan Clarkson, and some may say they say he's a Chuck, and look, that is not far from the truth. If you're worried about will he pass the rock, even in his down years, uh, and look, he's ranked in the 95th and 96th percentile, respectively, in years 2024, 25, and 23, 24 in those seasons. Uh, his assist percentage is in the 77th percentile and then 95th percentile. So, and the 95th percentile was in the 23, 24 season. So, this is a
Mm-hmm.
guy who, while he's on the rock, is looking to move the rock as well. And we even saw that with his stats. He averaged 5 assists last season, and he's over three. And look, you could say, hey, how come he didn't average more assists? I would say go look at that Jazz team and you'll understand there's two parts to the assist, man. You got to pass the rock and someone's got to make it. So I would say go and take a look at that. But look, I'm very curious, as you said. This is Mike Brown's issue, to figure out defense and lineups and stuff of that nature. And those are very valid points, Jeff. So it's the
Yeah.
Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning for another debrief. I'm calling this the debrief series once again. I'm with my guy Jeff Johnson on the other side. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button for your boy. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. All right. Make sure to check out our newsletter. We got people joining. Shout out to Joe, who just joined the newsletter team. Shout out to Jalen, Remy, Jeff, Chris, all right, Omar. Those guys do a phenomenal job over there, putting out great work. And look, if you join the newsletter, you also get to know about the merch deals. You get to know about all the events like Knicks Twitter Day if you want to show up for that this Saturday. Okay, make sure to go buy your tickets at knickstwitter.com. That's why you join the newsletter, to stay up to date on all the things that are happening. All right, let's keep the show rolling. So, Gershon Yabusele, man. French. We love our French players, man. We love the French. We got the French connection. There's no doubt about that. Who's going to get into their baguette this season? All right, not the bag, but the baguette. And look, I like this signing a lot. I find it comical that we designate him as a center standing at 6'8", because as you know, we all know those weights, those heights, they are fabricated. They are, it is like adding on. And I can tell you, like, and this goes outside of professional. When I played football, I played wide receiver, right? I weighed like a $165. They put my weight down. I was like, they said 185. I was like, man, I do not weigh 185. The height's about right, 5'11", but like that, I do not weigh that. So look, they like to fabricate things, man. They like to fabricate things. So to me, I look at him as a power forward, but I think as you were alluding to, Jeff, he could play some small ball 5. How do you feel about this signing?
Oh, I am inspired. Like, I know people were talking about, like, they're not hyped, they're not whatever over Mike Brown. I am inspired. I am hyped. We are so lit by having Yabusele, man. Like, I didn't think we had Yabusele money, first off. And it's inspiring to me that he had a chance to play with Jokic or play with the Knicks, and he chose the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. You could say it's about the conference. You could say it's about the role. I feel like his role would have been similar on the Nuggets as it would have been on the Knicks. He chose them. This is a guy who is excellent catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He attacks closeouts, shooting like 71% at the rim. He is like a spreadsheet superhero. 87% of his shots come from 3 or the rim. like I told my guy Sean with a W, I don't think he knows the French word for mid-range. It ain't happening. But this is someone who you get as a cat-like version of an offensive player who can attack the basket from the 3-point range, hits above the break threes. He hit above the break threes at a larger percentage than the Knicks as a team by like 3 or 4%. So this is a guy who can stretch the defense, who's strong, who's extremely strong, who can attack the rim, and he has a nice bag of moves around the rim too. That's why he was as effective as he was at the basket. The defense, it is what it is at this point. The way I look at the Knicks' current strategy is you're either excellent on both sides of the ball or excellent on one side. You can't be in this NBA, you cannot be on both sides of the ball. You either have to excel in one place or be very good in both. And I think the Knicks are over-indexing on offense, bringing in Mike Brown, who has his roots in defense, to be able to scheme a more modern NBA defense that can accentuate the skills of the lineups that he deploys. But with Yabusele, this is somebody, scoring relief was a key component that the Knicks needed, especially in them games against the Pacers. If they had Clarkson and Yabusele, I do not think Detroit goes to 6 games.
Yeah.
I think that's a sweep.
Yep.
Okay. If they had that consistent scoring off the bench where when Detroit was mucking up the game and there was no such thing as a foul, there was no such thing as an illegal screen, I think you would have had the guys that would have been able to fight through it and come back when the rest of the team was getting stagnant. Like, ultimately, they out-talented them. But I think now you have the ability to outscore and out-talent your opponent on the offensive side. So with Yabusele, with Clarkson, they give this team the modern qualities that you would want: 3-point shooting, lineup interchangeability. It doesn't matter if you're switchable if you can't guard, right? But I think if you have effort, that matters more than anything. And if you're put in certain schemes that will enhance the best qualities you have on that side, I think that's all good. But you're getting somebody who can shoot and who brings a toughness. And I think that is something that was sorely missing from this team. I think they're tough in their own regard. I do think they're mentally tough, which is more important than being fake tough. But I do think you need to have that edge on your team to where nobody fights in the NBA, but you got to have somebody who establishes a clear line and the other opponents know if you cross that line, they're going to bring you back on the other side of the line. And I think between Clarkson and Yabusele, you are injecting that edge back into your team again. And that more than anything, especially with what I saw in the NBA Cup quarterfinals against the Hawks, I feel like that is sorely needed more than anything.
For sure. And look, that was missed when Isaiah Hartenstein left because he was the guy that set that line, right? And we could even say, look at that NBA Finals where I won't forget where, Obi, I forget, he had like it was a question. I think it was a flagrant foul, right?
Right.
And then you have Hartenstein who's running up there, shoves him, and the two former Knicks getting into a little heated discussion, but you need somebody that's going to say, hey, you're not going to intimidate us. You're not going to bully us. We're going to set this line right here. And definitely Jordan Clarkson, we know he's ready to swing. And
Every time.
Yabusele, that man's a unit. All right. That man is an absolute unit. Standing at 6'8". I mean, it's funny because I look at cleaning the glass and how he's designated. He's designated as big. And that's like the
That's it.
perfect designation for him. He is big. All right. And with a guy like him, to me, I look at it as, you know, this is how I feel about it, Jeff. Josh Hart made the call to the front office, say, look, man, you guys have me playing power forward. I'm exhausted. All right. I am 6'4". All right. Y'all like to fabricate my height, being at 6'5" on some nights. All right. I am not a power forward. And we got Nick's Twitter out here saying that I'm a center.
Right.
No, I am not doing this anymore. Go get somebody who could do what I do, who's a little bit bigger. And that's essentially how I look at Yabusele. I mean, look, you talked about this is a guy who doesn't like the mid range. Damn, he's in the basement when it comes to these percentiles, man. He is not a guy who's going to shoot mid range. But when I look at finishing 71% of his shots around the rim, being the 65th percentile for a big, and then you're talking about all threes being in the 75th percentile, knocking 39% down. That's what this team needs, especially in the modern NBA where it's a lot of layups and
Yep.
threes. He does that effectively. And then, look, if you're talking about guarding, playing small ball five, doing what Draymond Green does, he has that frame to do that. We even saw that. Look, I was very impressed with his play in the Olympics. I mean, we all can't forget where he baptized LeBron James, right? But that type of strength to do that against LeBron, even for LeBron's age, right? Still talking about the king. And for him to do that, I think that says a lot about who he is as a player,
Yep.
the fearlessness of who he is too. And so he just adds that element, man. And you need that, especially when, look, I think another thing that we have to talk about is when we watch this team and with Tibbs' over reliance on that 5, 6, 7, whatever you want to talk about, we didn't have another true power forward we can go to.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to maximize the double big lineups, and I know we talk about Mitch and Cat, Yabusele out there with either Cat or Mitch is another threat because you're either going to have two bigs that can just play some solid defense, right? Or you're going to have two bigs that can knock down shots and one playing better defense than the other, and that's switchable. And so you can still hide Cat at that four position for Yabusele, with using Yabusele, who can, not saying he's going to stop guys like Jokic or even a Joel Embiid if Joel Embiid's very healthy, right? But
Mm-hmm.
still, he gives you that resistance, and still he can even help. Like if you want to double and do stuff like that, it won't be easy for anyone that you match up with. I do like the signing of Yabusele. It's going to be these two guys, as you mentioned. If we had these guys, now we have a legitimate nine,
Yeah.
right? This is a legitimate nine. You want to talk about putting one of the young kids, like want to talk about Kolek or Hukporti? Sure, that'll be your 10th guy right there. But this team has a legitimate nine now. And I think to your point, when I look at Yabusele and why he chose the Knicks, look, man, we got to be real and say you got to look at the conferences and look at like how close teams were to where they needed to be. Would you rather go to a stacked Western Conference, join the Nuggets, and say we got to compete with OKC who just beat us? We got to compete with the Rockets who
Mm-hmm.
just made all their signings. And then where does Denver even fall on that? All right. I know Dallas is going to take a year, but even if you sign with Denver, like they are going to be coming back. It's like there's that thought process too. Like, what avenue gives me the closest reach to a title? Because look what happened to Bruce Brown when he was on the Nuggets, right? All you got to do is just demonstrate how valuable you are as a role player, and you can still go get paid.
Yeah.
right? And so even Yabusele, that's another guy to me who's like he fits that Bruce Brown mold.
Mm-hmm.
So all you got to do, be part of a team, show how valuable you are as a role player, and I think that's the foresight in saying, what's the next contract? I know I'm taking less now, but how am I going to make more next year? And he signed with Philly. They were just doggish this year. All
Mm-hmm.
right, I get to stay in the division too, and that's the other thing no one's talking about. He stayed in division. All right, stayed in division and went to New York. So I like the signing.
There's a
One,
lot of untapped playmaking with him too. I've seen a lot
mm-hmm,
of his assists or his expected assists.
yep.
He has a little Hartenstein to him too, with the back door. You cut back door, he can feed you the rock. So give and go, dribble, handoff, pick and roll, pick and pop. You can't have too many of those type of guys on your squad. So I think Knicks fans, and I think he's going to be a fan favorite. Someone, and I wish I could give you the credit. I apologize in advance, but somebody said he was like Anthony Mason. He had like an
Mm.
Anthony Mason type build, and I've said for years, if Anthony Mason played today or even 10 years ago, that dude would be one of one.
Yeah,
Like real rap.
still is
Like
one of one.
he was ahead of his time. He was low key ahead of his time. But like I think Yabusele is gonna be a fan favorite for sure.
Absolutely. Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another debrief. With me on this side is my guy, Jeff Johnson. We're breaking these things down. We're breaking down the two top free agent signings for the Knicks. If you want to talk about draft, we did draft coverage. You can go back into the archives and go check that out. But now we're on to the piece de la resistance, since we got French people, all right, man? You know what I mean? We got French. I gotta throw the French out there now. All right. Combe Dadier. All right. We gotta do it, man.
Diawara.
Yeah. We got too many French. It's just crazy. Absolutely
Yeah.
crazy. But let's talk about Mike Brown. This is we could look at the roster all day, and that was the gripe with Tom Thibodeau. We could look at the roster all day on paper and be like, oh, they should do this, how far they can go. But it's all going to come down to mostly. I'm going to go with it's always going to be to me like 60, 70% the players. They got to go out there and execute, play. They're the ones doing the job. They got to go out there and do the damn thing. The other 30 to 40% is going to be the head coach. How do you design things? How do you keep everybody engaged? How are you that motivational speaker? How do you handle like the heat when the team's not playing well? Like this is going to be the player's confidant too, right? How do you maintain those locker room relationships? How do you maintain that relationship with the front office? These are all things CP reported when they want to say, all right, you want to focus on development for the young players, make sure they get playing time, be more creative offensively, use the depth that you got, and then be collaborative with everybody outside of the front office, the medical staff, your coaching staff, the whole 9 yards. This is on you, Mike Brown. All right. Welcome to the probably the most pressured job that you have. All right. You've coached in major markets. Welcome to New York. But Jeff, how are you feeling about the signing? Are you excited? You upset? Where are you at?
Man, I feel good. I feel good about it, man. I think if you were going to get a coach from what's available, I think you couldn't really do no worse than Mike Brown. There were a lot of solid candidates. Let's say that first off. There was a lot of solid candidates. But I think if you want somebody who can handle the pressure of expectations, Mike Brown is within that archetype too, because he's been in San Antonio, he's been in Golden State, won 4 championships as an assistant. He's coached LeBron, he's coached Kobe, he's
Mm-hmm.
coached KD, Steph, Dre, Clay. He's coached high level NBA players and some of the all-time greats. He's been in situations where he knew he would get none of the credit and all of the blame. He's been in situations where he's had to remake a franchise, like in Sacramento. He's gone through a role-playing game worth of narrative and storyline with the different boxes that you could check out in different situations. Like if you go on a job interview and you say, give me an example of when you were in a high pressure situation and you had to figure out a solution. He has like 6 or 7 or 8, 9, 10 examples of what he could give you. I think he's an accomplished coach. To me, if Tibbs was the Honda Civic, he's like the Acura RL right now.
Wow.
He's like the luxury version of the Honda line, where it's as reliable, but it has more innovation to it, more of the high level, to where, and shout out to John Macri, who wrote in his newsletter about the differences between Tibbs and Mike Brown, where, folks will get on here and say, oh, I don't see the difference between Tibbs and Mike Brown. The most dangerous question to ask a hot take artist is why. Because that one word will have their take crumbling like Rome did.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it is. Because they need to explain. And you know how sometimes you talk and you're like, damn, that sounds stupid. But you got to keep going, because to just pause out of nowhere would be weird. How some people, you can see it in their face. That's how they sound. They have similarities in that they're no nonsense. They have an old school approach to coaching. They have a level of accountability. But you have seen Mike Brown implement his innovation and the things that he's learned in his next stops. People's opinion of him in Cleveland are different in Golden State, are different in San Antonio, are different in Sacramento, because he's evolved with each stop. He told a story about how he was in a timeout and he wanted these guys to play defense in Sacramento, and he's getting on them. And I think Sabonis went to him, yeah, coach, we could do that. But what about that play we were practicing in practice for like 20 minutes that we haven't even run yet? And Mike Brown was like, you know what, DeMonte, you're right. You're right. I got you, but y'all got to play some defense for me. All right, coach, I got you. Then he proceeded to run that play like 20 times in the game. This is I don't think Tibbs would be as receptive to the same amount of feedback, the same level of feedback as we've seen and experienced. This is a guy who empowers his assistant coaches because that's what he was taught when he went to Kersburg. The things that he's seen, he's taken the best from and remixed it for his own style. That's what we were asking for. I don't know what your key characteristics were, Alex, but for me, it was somebody who could connect with the players on a human level and bring a locker room culture. Yep. Innovation, adaptability, and creativity with the way you distribute your lineups, with the way you use your bench and develop these players. Because of this CBA, you have to develop these future players. You got to hit on the rookies. You got to hit on these fringe level stars and these second rounders, because otherwise in a few years, you got to remake your whole roster. So you need somebody who's going to come in and cultivate this future generation while being more adaptable by making the in-game adjustments and doing all of that. This is what I wanted in just a more modern offensive coach. And I believe Mike Brown is that. I do not need a splash signing. I do not need excitement, because where has that gotten us? You know what was exciting? Andrea Bargnani.
Fizdale was exciting at one point.
Andrea Bargnani. Phil Jackson was exciting.
Yep.
This is exciting. What has excitement gotten us? So I like the stability. I like somebody who's evolved from what they've seen. And yes, I do like somebody who's more collaborative, because that shows that in any organization, any successful organization, it isn't a one-man band.
For sure.
It is a diversity of opinions, of experiences, and different perspectives that can come together and give you the best result. And that's what the Knicks need right now, especially as a team that's built to win now. That's what they need, and I think that's what they're getting with Mike Brown.
1,000%. I agree with you on all the points of what I wanted out of a head coach. I will say that I'm not excited. I'm not low on Mike Brown. I'm kind of indifferent, to be honest. At this point, I know what the resume is. I know he has a winning record. I know what he's capable of doing. I think for me, it's more so I know what this roster is. Can you achieve with this roster at this point? All right. And that's going to be the great for me. I'm not going to, because I see people on Twitter saying this is the greatest signing, this is the worst signing. And honestly, it's just, I got to stay waterman. I'll go with what I see and how the season unfolds. We already know what the expectation is. All right. And the front office made it loud and clear when they said their sights are on winning and a championship. They clearly said Tibbs couldn't do it. When you put those in words on paper, you're saying the guy that we currently have in place is not capable of doing it. So that means the next guy that you're hiring, you damn well have to believe that he's capable of doing it. And so that's the challenge for Mike Brown now. It's not, oh, well, he continued what Tibbs did and we were still successful. And they're like, you got to bring us very close. All right. You got to bring us very close. And if not that, win it. I know saying he has to win. saying someone has to win you a championship, it to me is like it's too hyperbolic because we don't know how a season will unfold. We don't know about
Exactly.
injuries. We don't know about changes. We don't know about the surprises, which is an young coming player that we don't know about. Like all of these happen during the season, so I can't say he will get us to a championship. The demand is that you bring us close, and then at that point, it's where the chips may lay. That's how I look at it as. So for me, I want to see that. But to all your points, I think he can do that. I'm expecting all of that out of this team. He does have a big challenge. This team is not a defensive stalwart. All right. And I still like, as the old adage is, defenses win championships. That is very true. And this game is more predicated about putting the ball in the hoop. So I know what he did in Sacramento. I expect that to happen here, where we have constant ball movement, the rock moving, flying left to right, multiple actions, all those things. I'm expecting all of that for this team. For me, it just comes down to like where, like how, I guess it's difficult to say because I can't say I expect the championship. I can't say what I expect. It's just how do you get there? And like, what's your process of getting there? Because I feel like when we watched Tom Thibodeau coach these teams, the means of getting to where the destination was, in the words of CP, it wasn't pretty, but it was gritty. And it's like, I don't need like gritty on some nights is great, but you got to make it easy, man. You have to make it easy. And you could bring up that postseason where every single game was just a rock fight. It was grinding gears. And at some point, like when you're watching the Knicks get there, and even when the rebuttal is like, you shouldn't have fired Tibbs, they're only 2 games away from a championship. It's like, dude, we had to watch this team struggle, like come from behind victories, like blowing leads. That's not a success for winning. You're playing, it's too much of a gamble to get there. And while they did make the ECF, and the last time they did was in 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be easier than what we just saw. And so that's the one thing I will expect out of Mike Brown. Can you make the season easier for this team? Because I feel like when you watch what OKC does, it felt easy for them. When I watched what the Pacers did, it looked easy. They put up a lot of points, but their practice stayed the same, right? I think the second thing, as I'm talking about these two teams, especially the ones that were in the NBA Finals, I need to see an identity. I need to know what this team is from the opening of the season. I have to, like, within those first 10, 20 games, I have to have an idea of, all right, this is the style of basketball we are. This is what we're winning into. And I know that not only do the fans know, but the players clearly know because they're executing it on a night-to-night basis, right? So two things that I need to see. It has to be easier for the players during the regular season. I'm not saying you load management and all those things. It just has to be easier. Like you cannot, there's no way, even in life, Jeff, you know this. You can't be grinding all night. You got to have some nights that are easier than others. The
Right.
nights against the Hornets should be easy. It should not be a rock fight.
Right.
Okay. When it's time to step up and you're like, all right, we're playing a top team tonight, fellas. This is going to be a challenging battle. We are going against OKC now. If that's a rock fight, then so be it. That's a challenging team. I'm expecting it. But it's got to be easy on some nights. I got to know what the team looks like, man. Those are the two
Yeah.
big things.
I love your point about the identity because I think that was lacking, to say the least. But you know what? That their identity was inconsistency. That
That's
was
what we
their
got.
identity. That was their identity. And I thought they would overcome it. And in the end, the inconsistency got them. But to your point about we need more wins where it wasn't gritty, but it was pretty. That's the wins that we need next year. We need pretty wins. We need blowouts. We need laughers. Because if the Knicks have to grind for every single win, then to me, that shows that there's a clear issue because there's no separation between your team and the next team. You can't be close to every team because
Right.
then you're mediocre.
And think about it. We were third, and it felt like we were so far away from the two teams at the top, but we were much closer to even the teams that were in the basement. I was like, how are we close to these teams? And I get talent wise, we were far, but production wise on the court, it felt like we were a lot closer. And that's why
Exactly.
when you watch the team, and it's like, even what you point out, what you want from a head coach, you felt the angst amongst the fan base, and not everybody, but you felt it. We're all saying the same things what we wanted to see, and that's why it was kind of like a hate watch. Like we're all tuning in, but it felt like a hate watch. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
everyone's expecting the inevitable. Like, all right, we're gonna lose to Boston, then we do the unthinkable, and then we lose to the Pacers. But it was like, all right, we just watched 82 games. Nothing was easy. We are inconsistent as hell. There's too many boneheaded plays, too much ISO heroism for this. And that's the thing that also has to change. But that's it, man. Those are the big things. Are there any concerns, though? Because I know we're about to wrap up, man. Any concerns from Mike about Mike Brown? I mean, we could talk about what we expect out of him, but are there any concerns?
Other than the worst case scenario, it doesn't click. He loses the locker room. It's just super turmoil, which I don't think is going to happen because I think Mike Brown is one of those guys who's commanded respect throughout the league from even the highest level of players. So I don't expect that. And this is another instance where Jalen Brunson has to earn the C on his chest and bring his team together, and he has to buy in from day one. So I think if the team moves as if he moves, then there's a heavy responsibility on his head to ensure that folks fall in line. That's first off. I think my concerns are, I know that there was some talk about Mike Brown being rigid and the whole Keon Ellis situation where he was just fed up with the way Ellis was playing D and wasn't going to play him. And when people were like, yo, you got to play this guy. Like, even there was points where I think one time they played the Knicks and I was like, why is this dude not playing? All right, whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I hope he's able to learn from those instances and apply it in this next role. I don't think he would have got the role if that level of rigidity was still visible
Mm-hmm.
in the interviews and all of that. I think this is pretty much a, yo, man, we got to get with the times. We got to get more modern. We have to have people who are lock in step with us in the front office. Like, yes, there's room to disagree and do all of that. But if we come to a consensus decision on something, each and every person, from the analytics person to the training staff to the head coach to the president, have to give maximum effort into ensuring that this objective is achieved.
Mm-hmm.
That is what needs to happen. And if we're not getting that, then we're not going to meet our ultimate goal. So I think if that doesn't happen, then the folks who are saying, well, why did we get rid of Tibbs if we were going to hire this guy will be right. So that's probably my main concern. I am concerned for the national media complex that they won't have anything else to discuss now that the Knicks have Swamley as a head coach, as if exploring every option is wrong. I believe it's only wrong when the Knicks do it. And I have a mild take, Alex, that I feel like a lot of the same people who say that it is abnormal for the Knicks to interview coaches that already have jobs, they're the same people who are insecure because when they got jobs, they think they were the number one option, but they don't know if they were the number one option.
Wow.
It could have been 2, 3, or 4. And there's nothing wrong with it because at the end of the day, you got the job because you were one of the top candidates that they were comfortable offering the position. We got the reporting that Mike Brown was part of the plan A if they couldn't get Udoka, if they couldn't get Jason Kidd. I don't think that's a bad class to be in. I think, you know, as this platform has reported, Dawn Staley was a consideration, right? As this platform reported, Mike Brown was all but locked up 13 hours before it was announced or it broke, right? You see the caliber of the talent that they interviewed, along with Borrego, along with Micah Nori. You see that the level of talent and coaching that they wanted to interview in order to get the position. And I it's just mind-boggling that this team was dragged for expanding their net and try to hire people and being told that there wasn't a plan when people can't even tell you why they think there wasn't a plan. Yes, the plan was they didn't want Tibbs to be the coach anymore and they wanted a new coach. They had a list, they went through their list, and they selected their candidate. But this is abnormal? Like, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? So now y'all got to talk about basketball until you find the next Knicks clickery to talk about.
Knicks clickery. I like that. By the way, I don't know how in one sentence, in 2 sentences, I might say, you actually slapped them across the face and then served them with flowers at the same time. The fact that you're like, hey, there were other candidates better than you, but you got the job because you were a top candidate. It's like, oh, damn, why'd you hit me? Oh, thank you for thinking I'm a top candidate. Appreciate it, man. That is very impressive how you did that. And for people who do that, don't do that while you're on a date, man. No, don't be like, by the way, you were the third call I made tonight, man. So don't worry.
But the fact remains, usually in these situations, there might be a couple of candidates.
Yeah.
But you don't know who's
you don't know who's the top.
Number two.
Right.
Clearly, if you're trying to interview somebody under contract, they're a number one choice. That's the problem. But I've seen the Nuggets fired their coach and their GM before the playoffs. And in the last 2 weeks, they just settled on the guy that was the interim coach. But it wasn't said that they didn't have a plan. It's just hilarious to me. It's really hilarious, dog. But yeah.
By the way, the guy that they fired, he has yet to land a job. Doesn't that say a lot? But and by the way, the same team was ridiculed for not interviewing Mike Malone. But yet, I know there's not a lot of vacancies, but if this guy's on the market and you want him, he's there. He's there to be had.
It is what it is. We know what this is. You've been doing this long enough where you know what it is. And I'll tell the fans and anybody listening, this is more so just holding a mirror to the opinions and the narratives that you consume throughout the day, while being able to recognize everything that's being said and filter it out to what it really is.
Yep.
Yes. If there is credible reporting that there was no plan in mind, cool. We didn't get that.
We did not.
There's a lot of speculation, but everything that you're hearing now sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it sounds like they identified what they want out of a guy, interviewed the people who they had on their list to see who they could interview and see, did you align with our vision? Could you align with it? And they chose the guy that could, man.
Exactly.
Sorry to cut you off, but
it is. No. It's all good. Because I would have went into an infinite loop because it pisses me off, bro. It is, especially when people keep trying to use the Knicks fans and the Knicks name for fodder. But yes, they brought a lot of it on themselves throughout the years, but we got to keep it real. Y'all been criticizing Tibbs about the same stuff year after year after year. And the minute the Knicks say, you know what, you're right, not like that. And then you expect us to listen to your opinions in good faith. This is why I'm thankful for the platforms that we have and for people like us that appear on larger platforms to be able to bring the nuance and the context to the conversation and just another side so that it can really be balanced. Like, yes, I understand y'all need these clicks, y'all need these views, y'all got to get y'all takes off. And this is this along with the Cowboys are probably the two instant offense takes that you can put out there to get an immediate reaction. But when you have the real countering you, that's when y'all get shook.
Mm-hmm. That's right, because that means you got to do your research and know what you're talking about in order to do so.
100%.
And that's why people come to us, man. That's why people come to us and talk about it, man. So, Jeff, I appreciate you for coming through and helping me break down, debriefing everything as always, my guy. Please let the listeners know where they can find you. And if you got any work up and coming, we should be on the lookout for.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jeff J Says, all social media, and also the Jeff J Says YouTube channel. I host Casual Friday on Knicks Film School every Friday throughout the regular season. Days, times can be subject to change, just like any schedule, but you can catch me there. Also, NBA.com digital doing voiceovers of top 10 countdowns and plays. And, wherever you see your favorite content creators, say my name and I may appear. So definitely check it out and lock into all my socials if you want to hear more.
There you go. Jeff popping out like the genie from Aladdin. That's how he is, man. That's how he is. Knicks Nation, appreciate you all for tuning for another debrief. All right, we just had to break down the free agent signings and talk about Mike Brown. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to give Jeff J Says a follow. All right, does phenomenal work on all of his platforms, covering the Knicks, covering even pop culture wrestling, man. That's why you gotta go check him out. He knows his damn thing, so make sure to give him a follow. And while you're over here at KFTV, make sure to go to KnicksFanTV.com shop so that way you can get some of this merch. Look, I got the mural on right now. I got the KFTV hat. All right, gonna be rocking some of the gear when you see us at Knicks Twitter Day this Saturday. So hope to see you all out there as well. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter so that way you stay up to date on all the merch, all the sponsors, all the articles, just to see all the videos that we're dropping too. and always stay locked into right here, youtube.com/KnicksFanTV, where you can find us talking about the Knicks 24/7. It don't stop, people. It don't stop. All right, everyone. We'll catch you later. We out.